So for example 2, what we're going to do is, again, start with the same way. We're going to put in our values. So a is -2 because that's in front of the square term. B is 4 because that's in front of the x term. And we don't have a c value, so c is 0. The direction that it opens is going to be down because a is negative. So it's going to go down. And now we're going to find our vertex. And so remember, the way we find our vertex is we're going to find the h value, which is -b over 2a. So in this case, we're going to go -b, so -4 over 2 times -2. So this is -4, and then 2 times -2 is -4. -4 divided by -4 is +1. And so now we have our h value, or our x value of our vertex. And then, sorry about that. And then we are going to put that into our equation to find our k. So we're going to go k is equal to -2. Everywhere there's an x, I'm going to put in my value of h. And so in this case, h is 1. So when we put that into our, we can either put it in our calculator or just do the math. It's up to you guys. -2, 1 squared is just 1. So really, this is just saying this is -2 times 1 plus 4. So -2 plus 4 is just 2. If you put it in your calculator, you're still going to get 2. So it's up to you. And so we have our vertex then at 1, 2. So it says, is it a maximum or minimum point? Because it goes down, it's a maximum. All right. And it says, what's the maximum or minimum value? So that, again, is the y value or the k value of your vertex. So our maximum value is a 2 for y. Our axis of symmetry is going to be x is equal to 1. And our y-intercept is the c value. And our c value is 0. So our y-intercept is at 0, 0. And now we're going to go over and graph. And so I always like to do domain and range very last. Although domain is nice because you always know that it's going to be -infinity to infinity, or all real numbers, dependent on how you're putting that in. So anyway, we're going to go and graph. And so the very first thing we do is graph our vertex, which is at 1, 2. So over 1, up 2. I don't know if my graph looks a little bit weird. It's all elongated. And then that's where your axis of symmetry is. So our axis of symmetry is going through that point, through 1. Sorry, that's off just a tad. And then so we know that that's going to be symmetric around that. And so we're going to graph our y-intercept. So our y-intercept is at 0, 0. And notice how that's 1 space away from the dashed line. So we're going to go 1 space away from the dashed line, and then I just connect. So I'm going to go, well, the second line's a little bit funky, but it's okay. Again, we're just doing the best we can. It's just a guess. Now those are actually like our y-intercept and our reflected point are actually our x-intercepts as well. So it kind of works out nice for this one. Couple of things when you look at that, notice how when I graphed my y-intercept, it was below my vertex, and it helps us see that it's going to go down. If that didn't happen, like if I missed my sign somehow and it was down here at 1, -2, then you can kind of see that it was going to go up, which kind of tells you that you did something wrong up here. So then our range, again, is I don't have a low point because it goes down forever. So it's going to go from -infinity up to our maximum point, which is 2. And it's a bracket because it's one of our points. Or because it's going down, we're going to say y is less than or equal to 2 because that's our highest point, and all our y's are smaller than it. So it's kind of dependent on if it's going up or down, if it's a greater than or less than. So our last example is this one, and we're just going to put in the pieces of information that we know. So again, we know that A is 3, we know B is -6, and we know C is -5, just based off our equation. Direction of opening, we look at A and it's positive, so we know that it goes up. And then when we go to find our vertex, remember we like to do H is equal to -B/2A. If you are still a fan of completing the square, then feel free. I don't care. You get the same point either way. Negative B, so negative of -6 over 2 times A, which is 3. So negative times a negative is a positive. 2 times 3 is 6, and so 6 over 6 is 1. And then we're going to go back and plug that into our equation to find K. So we're going to go 3. Everywhere there's an X, I'm going to put parentheses, and I'm going to substitute in my value. So remember, my value that I'm putting in is 1. And then I'm just going to do the math. And you guys can put it in the calculator if you want to. This is 3 times 1. -6 times 1 is -6 minus 5. And so really you have 3 minus 6 minus 5. And so 3 minus 6 is -3 minus 5 is -8. Again, you could plug it into the calculator at this point and get your points. So my vertex point is going to be 1, -8. And then it says, is it a maximum or minimum point? Remember that we know that it is going to be a minimum point because it faces up. And then our minimum value is the y value or the k value, which in this case is going to be -8. We know our axis of symmetry is going to be x is equal to the h value of our vertex, which is 1. And we know our y-intercept is the c value, which is 0, -5. And then I always like to graph. So we're going to graph 1, -8. So over 1, down 8. So we're going to have to put another point on there. So here's 7, here's 8. So 1, -8. That's also our line of symmetry. All right, and then we are going to graph our y-intercept, which is at 0, -5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice that's one space away from our axis of symmetry, and so it's going to be one space on the other side away from our axis of symmetry. And then we just are going to connect those dots. Well, we're going to try. We're going to do the best we can. That wasn't very good. Okay, remember it's got a curve to it. Don't do a straight line. Domain, remember, -infinity to infinity, or all real numbers. And then our range is from, in this case, our maximum or minimum value, which is -8. So we're going to go -8 to infinity because it goes up forever. Or we're going to say y is greater than or equal to -8. Depend on if we're doing interval notation or set notation. Again, Big Ideas does set notation. Most mathematicians do interval notation. All right, and that's it for 3.2 notes. If you have any questions, make sure you ask. You can email me or you can join Zoom when you're supposed to. All right, talk to you later.